I'm John Delaney, and I approve this message. For all too long, but now more than ever, we see the right and left pitted against each other. We need to stop the noise of toxic divisiveness. And as I've campaigned for president across America, this is a movement. This is why I'm running for president. Thank you, Iowa. God bless you. I've met a nation of people not separated by their differences, but connected by their humanity, by their shared experiences and interests, by their love of their family, their friends, their communities, and their country. When people talk to me and my wife, April, their concerns are not with each other, but with the challenges of raising children in an exploding technology age, with crushing education costs. They fear healthcare rates and prescription drug prices, putting their lives at risk. They worry about jobs becoming obsolete, income inequality, and a living wage. They're concerned about their human rights being challenged based on race and gender. They want immigration dealt with compassion and safety. They want trust, not greed, from our financial institutions. They want our international relations restored with respect, and our planet's climate change dealt with urgency. And yes, they want honesty in our government and a new president that will return dignity to the White House. As I've campaigned for president across America, I've found that what people really want is real solutions, not impossible promises to our country's challenges. You want the truth, and that is exactly what I'll give you in this program. You'll get to know more about me, my family background, and my leadership in both private business and serving America in Congress. My record as a unifier and my vision for the future. I will go through the issues facing our country and give you my solutions in detail. After a blue-collar upbringing and a successful business career, I served proudly in the United States Congress. I chose not to seek a fourth term and instead decided to run for president, partly because of this issue: extreme partisanship. Over decades, the Congress's Republican and Democratic parties' ideologies have drifted so far apart that our government no longer works, and it has divided our country. How can 50% of the people be wrong 100% of the time? It's ridiculous. A partisan far-left or far-right president is built for failure. During my term, I was voted the third most bipartisan member of Congress. In business, I worked with thousands of diverse people and companies. Well, I've spent my whole life unifying people. Let me give you a little background about me, and then let's start with the economy. I'm the grandson of an immigrant working construction in New Jersey, the son of a union electrician and military vet. I became an entrepreneur and was the youngest CEO to ever launch a company on the New York Stock Exchange, which I did twice. April and I are blessed with 4 daughters that remind us every day how urgent changes are needed for our country to ensure all of our children's futures. And that starts with economic opportunity. The core of our country's wealth gap is the inequality of opportunity. Last year, 80% of the managed venture capital in the United States went to just 4 areas: San Francisco, New York, Boston, and Los Angeles. That's just 50 counties out of over 3,000 in America. Does that sound fair? We need focused investing in these distressed areas. As president, I will expand opportunity zones and provide tax incentives to invest in places left behind. I'll create a new workers' tax credit by doubling the existing earned income tax credit. I'll invest in their infrastructure and support entrepreneurs. We need their innovations, ideas, and perseverance to create new businesses and new jobs to replace those made obsolete by technology and automation. This is something I've been doing all my life. One of my businesses was essentially a Shark Tank that helped fund thousands of small to medium-sized businesses for entrepreneurs and people all across America. Of all 435 House representatives, I was the only CEO of a publicly traded company in Congress. That should be very relevant to every voter.
We worked with John back in 2004. The strategy was to grow ASG. It was a challenge for the larger banks to finance a company like ours. John's firm was one of the few that stepped up and gave us the credit facility that made sense to us. We went from 150 employees back in 2003 to over 1,000 employees today, and John Delaney helped fuel that growth.
Now let's talk about your wallet. I will raise the federal minimum wage to $15 per hour over time, including for tipped employees, and then index it to inflation. I will also create a new workers' tax credit by expanding and nearly doubling the existing Earned Income Tax Credit program. It would provide financial assistance to 14 million more households than the current program, an increase of almost 50%. Workers' tax credit would be paid for by raising capital gains tax rates on high-income earners to match what workers pay, repealing the Trump tax cuts for high-income earners, and creating a new robot tax on job-displacing capital investments. No U.S. president has ever had any healthcare background, none. Perhaps that's why there has never been a great U.S. healthcare system. I actually launched and ran a successful business focused on the healthcare industry. I helped fund small and medium-sized healthcare companies, especially in areas that needed it most. Let's try an experiment. I'm going to explain two plans and I want you to think about which sounds better. First, let's discuss Plan A. Do you like a plan that will give universal healthcare free to every American as a right? Will allow the 150 million Americans to keep their own private insurance if they want to. Allow as many as 2 million people in the healthcare and insurance industries to keep their jobs and allow for higher quality healthcare. Okay, so Plan A sounds pretty good, right? Let's check out Plan B. Do you like a plan that will give universal healthcare free to every American as a right, will make it illegal to have private insurance and force 150 million Americans to give up their private insurance, cut reimbursements to hospitals and other providers, and cause many of them to close. Cause millions of people in the healthcare insurance industries to lose their jobs and cause lower quality healthcare. So which plan do we like? Plan A seems to be common sense, right? Well, that's my plan. Better care. It's similar to the models used in Germany and France. Plan B is Medicare for all, and is promoted by politicians with no healthcare experience using fairy tale economics. Just like a fairy tale, it sounds magical, but it's never going to come true. My Better Care proposal guarantees free universal healthcare to all Americans. Everyone will be automatically enrolled, with pre-existing conditions covered. My plan keeps private insurance as an option, where individuals receive a tax credit for opting out of the government plan, and keeps Medicare for those over 65. I will also intensify investment in research to cure cancer, Alzheimer's, and other diseases. Better Care would be fully paid for by closing the corporate healthcare tax loophole, applying the Affordable Care Act's tax subsidies, and instituting a cost-sharing requirement for higher-income individuals. America spends way more in healthcare costs than comparable countries. The worst disparity is prescription drug prices. I'll end our ban on negotiating drug prices to allow the government to negotiate directly with pharmaceutical companies.
John Delaney is a force of nature. He can tackle things no one else can tackle, and he can make progress on issues that other people get daunted by. John just simply doesn't have an equal in his ability to tackle hard things and make progress. People listen to John and they say, I can sign up for that plan.
Now let's talk about something that deals with the lives of everyone and our children: gun safety. It's not a Republican or Democratic issue. It's a human being issue. According to the CDC, guns were responsible for nearly 40,000 deaths in 2017, more than the annual number of automobile deaths. 97% of the American people agree that we need universal background checks on gun sales. It's not 3% of the population stopping universal background checks, it's politicians. I support requiring universal background checks for every gun sale. I co-sponsored the Assault Weapons Ban Act, and I will support legislation that bans all accessories designed to increase the rate of fire of a semi-automatic weapon. I support updating the Violence Against Women Act to extend the ban on convicted domestic abusers buying firearms to cover non-spouse partners. I believe it is possible to respect the Second Amendment and still adopt meaningful reforms. And we can do it. This is a magnificent country. We have literally every advantage any nation could possibly want to have in 2019, except for one thing. We've got a broken government, and they don't do anything. I have new ideas. My plans are workable. I'll tell you how I pay for every one of them, and I'll tell you exactly how I'll get them done. Because that's what I think you deserve. And that's what we need from our next president. Right now, there are so many challenges facing our great nation that need to be addressed with urgency. At the top of the list is education. Education changed my life. My parents didn't go to college. My dad was a union electrician. His union gave me a scholarship to go to college at Columbia University. Then I attended Georgetown Law School, where I met April. Without my education, perhaps I never would have started the companies that I did, or created thousands of jobs that impacted thousands of lives across America. And I probably would not be a candidate for president. We must rethink our model of education, which was designed to prepare students for a factory-oriented economy. As president, I will prioritize education. I will make pre-K through 14 the new K through 12 by making pre-K and 2 years of free college or technical training part of basic public education. I will promote STEM education, technical training, coding, certificate programs, and apprenticeships to close the jobs skills gap. We also need to support the arts and artists. And most of all, our teachers, who shape our children's futures. Studies show that every tier of education provides higher salaries and increased opportunities. But what good is that increased salary if you are being crushed by a mountain of student loan debt for decades? I know how loans are financed. Politicians that tell you they are going to forgive all the student debt never ran a business. That is just fairy tale economics. If we had that much money to invest in public education, wouldn't we use some of it for early childhood, some of it for pre-K, some of it to pay our teachers the wages they deserve, and yes, some of it to provide targeted student debt relief? That's my plan. How do we pay for it? By a 1.5% surtax on high incomes over $500,000 annually. And I'll roll back the Trump tax cuts on high earners as well. That's a real solution. In addition, for student loans, I will allow borrowers to use a pay-as-you-earn plan. I will reduce interest rates on federal student loans. I support allowing borrowers with high-interest private loans to refinance to low-interest federal loans that would be eligible for income-based repayment programs. I will increase funding for Pell Grants, and I would allow borrowers to discharge student loan debt in bankruptcy. America needs its kids to go to college, to get technical training, to get apprenticeships. And it's not just for them to get jobs, it's for them to create jobs. We have an obligation not only to them, but to our country to give them the education and training they deserve, and to make it fair and affordable. So I don't think what the American people need is more gridlock, more partisanship, or more ideology. You know what I think they need? They need solutions. They need us to get real things done that matter in their lives. Now I'd like to talk about something that is stunning that is still not fully accomplished today: equal rights. Equal rights for everyone. I think if you asked any person, is everyone an equal citizen in our country? Would anyone say, well, that person is less equal than me? No. Then why are we not practicing what we preach? America needs to protect and support every one of our citizens equally. April and I have 4 daughters. She has been involved with numerous women's organizations fighting for the rights of women and young girls. As president, I will support the Paycheck Fairness Act, which would ensure equal pay for equal work by protecting workers, allowing federal enforcement, and removing loopholes employers use to justify discrimination. Everyone deserves a workplace free of sexual harassment and gender discrimination. I support strong whistleblower protections. My living wage plan provides paid family leave and guarantees health care for pregnancy and maternal care. We need to protect Roe v. Wade as law. I want the Hyde Amendment repealed and pledge to protect federal funding for Planned Parenthood. And we need to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment. We have made tremendous progress in recent years, but the fight for full civil rights for all LGBTQ Americans isn't over. While in Congress, I was proud to be a member of the LGBTQ Equality Caucus and received a 100% score from the Human Rights Campaign for each of my 3 congressional terms. As president, I will support the Equality Act to guarantee equal civil rights. It prohibits discrimination in employment, housing, credit, and public accommodations. I will ensure that the Title IX ban on sex discrimination in education also protects LGBTQ students. I will ban conversion therapy and protect the LGBTQ community from violence and sexual harassment. I support the Voting Rights Advancement Act, and I will also allow transgender individuals to proudly serve in the military. Our country should be grateful and honored for every person who wishes to serve. Equal means equal, right? Well, that unfortunately is not what African Americans and other minorities have lived. As president, I would do everything I can to reform the criminal justice system. Everyone thinks this needs to be corrected, but we need to stop thinking and start doing. As president, I will increase funds to low-income schools through increases to Title I funding. I don't just say I support investing in minority communities and businesses in distressed areas, as many politicians claim. I have done it my whole career. The need for support is urgent. 16.9% of African American households don't have a bank account. I propose legislation to create nonprofit banks in distressed communities. We need to ensure minority entrepreneurs have access to capital. I want to restore anti-discrimination regulations in financial services. As president, I will invest infrastructure funding in minority communities. And I'll create federal grant programs to fund startup incubators and institute a tax credit to promote investments in minority-owned businesses.
John's a progressive businessman. In building his companies, he always insisted on the highest of ethical standards. He treated people with respect, created jobs with good pay and benefits, and always was giving back to the community. The Obama administration awarded John's company the Bank Enterprise Award for investing in communities that so many banks underserve and ignore. That's classic John, always doing more.
My grandparents were immigrants. In 1923, my grandfather came to this country from England. Back then, what they used to do was something called a 6-second physical. So my grandfather's 7 brothers and sisters and their mother passed, but my granddad gets detained. They separate him from his family and send him to be deported because he had one arm. He was playing with a bombshell that hadn't exploded from World War I. Back then, America didn't let people they considered disabled and unable to work into our country. Sound familiar? So they appealed his immigration denial. His appeal was held in the Great Hall of Ellis Island, and my grandfather was in the back of the room watching, sick with anxiety and fear, as the appeals judge walked in. And the judge had one arm. My granddad said that was the moment he knew he was going to be an American. He worked at a pencil factory his whole life to provide his family a shot at the American dream. That was a moment of shared humanity between a family that wanted to be Americans and an immigration judge that treated them with dignity and compassion. That judge changed my family forever. A lot of time is spent by our current president implying that we can't afford any more immigrants in our country. Well, that's just not true. The Congressional Budget Office has said that comprehensive immigration reform actually raises $200 billion for the government. It reduces our deficit, it boosts GDP, it improves the solvency of Social Security, improves our national security, and enriches our society. Independent analysts have shown that immigration serves as a stimulus to the U.S. economy. Immigrants are twice as likely to start a business. Immigrant-run businesses employ about 1 in 10 American workers in the private sector. Immigrants who are documented then pay taxes that support programs like Social Security and Medicare. As president, I would negotiate a comprehensive immigration reform that includes a clear path to citizenship for undocumented immigrants and dreamers, investing in border security, including high-tech solutions, fencing, security personnel, and improvements to ports of entry, reforming the visa programs for guest workers, and increasing the refugee cap for resettlement in the United States.
President Kennedy said it well in Baltimore, Maryland in 1958. He said we shouldn't seek the Democratic answer or the Republican answer. We should seek the right answer. That's the kind of president we need.
One of the most critical issues facing our planet that affects all of us is climate change. I am proposing a $4 trillion climate plan that is full of new ideas and innovative solutions. And I would also rejoin the Paris Climate Agreement on day one of my presidency. Limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius will require achieving net zero emissions by 2050. As president, my plan will put us on the right track to reduce emissions in time to avoid the worst consequences of global warming. The largest component of my climate plan is my carbon fee and dividend proposal. The carbon fee's revenue is returned to the American people as a dividend. My plan's carbon fee will reduce carbon emissions by 90% by 2050. We have to massively invest in negative emissions technology, such as carbon capture machines, to remove the remaining 10%. Politicians telling you they will immediately eliminate all fossil fuels at once are making impossible promises. It cannot be done at once, and it needs to be eliminated over time. I propose a 5-fold increase in Department of Energy green energy research programs. I will bolster renewable energy tax credits and create a new challenge grant program for significant innovations.
John grew up the son of a union electrician. Hard work, decent pay, health care, a pension. He understands what that means for a working family. It was a union scholarship that helped John afford college. In building 2 businesses from scratch, John succeeded by working with others, like his dad did on a job site. He builds teams, he's creative, and he's a problem solver. And he's always motivated by a set of progressive and ethical values.
If immigrants are the foundation of America, farmers are the heart, which is why we call our vast agricultural regions the Heartland. Farming is personal in our family. My wife, April, is a farmer's daughter. She grew up on her family's potato farm in Idaho. Her family knows firsthand the seriousness of trade deals, economic growth, infrastructure, rural health, and climate change. I have a plan to protect farmers, communities, and the agricultural industry called the Heartland Fair Deal. In my plan, I would provide student loan forgiveness for people who live and work in these communities for up to 10 years. Give priority in government contracting to businesses with a majority of their employees in rural and distressed areas. Fix Opportunity Zone legislation to focus on operating businesses. Create a new workers' tax credit. Incentivize companies to build negative emissions technologies in rural and coal counties. And create new loan programs to encourage entrepreneurship in rural America. U.S. agriculture feeds our country and much of the world. We have to end the trade wars and expand markets for U.S. agriculture.
It's really pretty simple. If you think of it like a business, you should sell what people want to buy. What the American people want to buy right now is someone to try to bring them together and get us to a different place. And the thing is, it can change quickly. It can change in one election.
When President Obama proposed the Trans-Pacific Partnership, some in our party attacked him, embracing isolationist, Trumpian economics. I'm proud to say that I'm one of the very few Democrats that stood with President Obama on trade. Since we've abandoned TPP and started a trade war, bankruptcies in farm country have skyrocketed, and rural economies have been damaged. But it's not just about economics, it's also about geopolitics. If we had joined the TPP, we would have been at the head of the table of a 12-country economic bloc that would set the trade rules for 40% of the global economy. Instead of doing that, we ceded the region to Chinese economic dominance. The truth is that rules-based trade is good for the United States of America. I like to say we have to think globally, but we have to invest locally, because it's the right thing to do. Infrastructure is a critical problem in America. Our roads and bridges are crumbling. Rural areas still do not have connectivity. This affects every American in some way. And we have bipartisan support to fix this, yet it just never seems to get done. The American Society of Civil Engineers gave us a D+ average on their infrastructure report card. This is a dangerous crisis that needs to be dealt with now. Not only is infrastructure funding necessary to improve the system, investing in rebuilding crumbling infrastructure is a job creator and will boost the economy. Infrastructure has the second highest return on investment for the government. I have a $2 trillion plan that will stimulate economic growth and innovation by creating jobs to repair and update our nation's deteriorating infrastructure. And my plan is fully paid for by raising the corporate tax rate to 27%. And increasing the federal gas tax to account for inflation. I propose creating 5 funds that match state and local investments 4-to-1 in specific categories, including deferred maintenance, such as our rail system that has repair backlogs over 100 years old. Distressed areas need to be prioritized. Rural broadband. Nearly 40% of rural communities lack reliable internet. Water, to ensure a crisis like Flint, Michigan never happens again. And my school matching fund, which will build and upgrade schools. The cost of doing nothing is not nothing. My friends, together we are on a mission to find the America that has been lost. Lost through inaction, lost through incivility, lost through a president who lacks a moral compass. We're better than this. Every one of us are better than this. I don't want to just be your president. I want to do the job. God bless the United States of America, and let's win in 2020. God bless you all. Thank you for having me. Folks, I believe you have a very clear choice. You can go down the road that some candidates want to take you, which is about divisive politics, bad policy proposals like Medicare for all, or free everything, and turn off independent voters and re-elect Trump. Or you can nominate someone like me, who will unify the country, bring universal health care for every American with choice, increase the safety net for the most vulnerable, and use my skills as the only person running that's actually created thousands of jobs in business and served in Congress to grow the economy for every American in an environmentally responsible way and actually win the White House in 2020. Most candidates are running on impossible promises. We don't need more of that, and we don't have time for it. I'm running on what we need to get America working again.
The Democratic National Committee is requiring each presidential candidate to have 165,000 unique donors to be in future debates. We need John's voice of leadership, unity, vision, and real solutions in those debates. Get John back on the debate stage. Go to johndelaney.com and donate $1 now.